Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is today, and welcome back. I hope your week is unfolding oh so beautifully. It's Wednesday, hump day, middle of the week, all downhill from here. But we got business to attend to today. We're excited to announce that the media is now dropping off the Maryland man hoax. You see that patriots are in control. Shared this post with us today. And you'll notice a little change in the language here. Some time ago, back in early April, mid April, they called him the Maryland man. But now ABC calls him the Salvadoran man. Oh, what happened? Did his citizenship change all of a sudden? No, they're just fake news hacks. And finally, they can't hide from the truth. The dude's from Salvador, El Salvador. He is where he belongs. And we got a new story that's breaking on this. In fact, ABC News is investigating this. They looked into this and they found that the Trump DOJ went to the guy who owned the vehicle that Kilmar wife beater Abrego Garcia was driving. That guy's name was Jose Ramon. And they visited him in jail, in prison, and they granted him some immunity so that he would talk about the situation. And he did talk about the situation, and we'll hear what he said. So all that's coming up. The Tennessee Star also has been digging into this, coming out, and we got updates in the Zenus case because we got a bunch of these deportation cases percolating, and we were waiting for some updates on these things. And finally, we do have a new briefing scheduling order. This is in the Judge Paula Zenus case. We've talked a lot about her. She's got the actual Abrego case, and she was ordering discovery, remember? And then there were a bunch of sealed filings, and then she stayed a bunch of stuff, and now she issued a new order. So we'll go through that. We also have some filings from the Trump DOJ. Been waiting for this one too. You see this one's fresh out of the oven, coming out in the JGG case. So this is the Judge Boasberg case. This was the other deportation case we spent a lot of time on, where the judge said, turn the plane around, bring him back here. They were all going to CCOT, and he said, no, actually, we wanted you to bring him back here and put him in New York City. So what has happened here is Pam Bondi and the DOJ, they've come out and they're fighting the class certification. See that there? And remember that all of these judges are certifying these Tren de Aragua gangbangers and these MS-13 gang members as a class, and saying that an injunction applies to all of them all across the nation, even though they're only filing as to a handful of particular people. In this case, it was only for JGG. But we got a response from Pam Bondi. We'll see what Boasberg does with this. But you can't certify a class of the gangbangers. Hello, judge. So all that's coming up. Then we'll turn our attention to other segments. One to Diddy. We had some final jury selection updates on the Diddy case that we'll go through. But it's getting pretty spicy because an attorney who's working with Sean Diddy came out and he said that Diddy has a problem, and it's really a six-pack of white women. Oh, the judge didn't like that. Says Geragos, who's not officially on the defense team, but was the subject of a letter yesterday, was admonished by the judge, who called those remarks outrageous. So you can see where this is going to go. It's going to be spicy as hell. It's a lot of fun. So this is warming up. They finished jury selection. We should get the final jury selected on Friday, so we won't have any Diddy updates tomorrow, but we are going to finish up with the jury selection today, courtesy of Inner City Press reporting on this. He was there in the Southern District of New York. And so this trial is getting ready to pop on Monday. And then we had a little short segment here of Kash Patel. He got into it with this woman, a representative from Pennsylvania called Madeline Dean, who led a lot of the impeachment efforts against President Trump back during, I forget which one, who knows, one of the two. And that's coming up. Well, here, yeah, I heard it has been glitchy. I heard it's been glitchy, and I saw that Ricardo was also saying that his chat was having some glitchiness. I'm wondering if this is a StreamYard problem that's happening. Anyways, Kash Patel, so we're going to keep our eye on that. I'm monitoring the tubes, potentially clogged tubes. Anyone seeing that across the other streamers? Anybody using StreamYard, I think, might have been running into some problems. All right. Well, we'll keep our eye on it, but thanks for flagging it for us. And I noticed it's been, I think, going around. I don't know if it's just us. I emailed tech support, just to be clear. I emailed StreamYard and I said, hey, this is unacceptable. We're running a professional show here on this channel. We demand excellence and precision. And they responded and they said, well, just check your ISP. I said, thanks for that. So we might be swapping, honestly, we might be swapping back over to Restream because at least they give you good analytics. So we'll continue to diagnose it. I apologize for any technical problems. It might be in the back end of the software. They didn't help. They weren't very helpful. Anyways, all right. So we're going to talk Diddy. We'll go through what happened in jury selection day 3. We got most of the jury. We should have some peremptories that come out on Friday. And then we'll start with opening arguments on Monday. And then we'll hear from a 6-pack of white women, which is just going to be outstanding. Baby oil, 6-packs of white women. It's going to be great. So Kash Patel coming up. Also, there was this story about this strategic implementation plan for countering domestic terrorism. This came out from Joe Biden's team, and they were launching this against, well, us, you and me, essentially. I think anybody who wasn't on board with climate change and trans lipidogophamies, then if you're not in that category, then you're, by definition, you're a domestic extremist or something. So we'll go through that because Just the News reported that, said Tulsi Gabbard declassified a bunch of things, and we'll see what is inside before we hear from Kash, because Kash and Pam came out and they said, we're coming after these child predators. We're not going to be dealing with them kindly like the last administration did. So it's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful morning, a beautiful afternoon. What the heck, where are we right now? We have somebody watching on Twitch. That's amazing. So we are actually getting some more people watching on Twitch. That's pretty cool. Thank you for doing that. What's up? Idiot HQ saying, can you do memberships on Twitch? You know, we're not really set up for it because nobody was really watching over there, but we are getting a handful of people over there. So we might, want to pay more attention to our friends on Twitch so that we can stand our ground over there. Make our voices heard, Anyways, so shout out to our friends on Twitch. Okay, so my friends, we had a great members only stream this morning. If you haven't become a member yet, we'd love it if you did consider becoming a member. We do great streams. We have a lot of fun stuff coming up. And this weekend on we got Mother's Day coming up this weekend. Mama G is coming up to Prescott, Arizona, and we're going to live stream the making of the meatballs. She's got this great meatball recipe. She sent over what we need to go buy. Something like 60 Roma tomatoes or something like that was on the list. 60 Roma tomatoes. So we're going to make like 100 meatballs. We're going to live stream it. It's not going to be here. We'll keep it separate from the main channel. Likely going to be at the lodge, watcherlodge.com. So if you want to check that out, I'll put a calendar invite over there. That's where it will be. We'll get that set up. But that's coming up this weekend, and hopefully we see you there. We're going to cook some meatballs, baby. All right. So without any further ado, let's get into it on the day. So Saturday, probably around noon or 1 or so. We haven't decided yet. It's going to be a lot of fun. Family recipe passed down for generations and delicious. All right, so let's get to it. Here we go. The Maryland Man hoax is now coming to an end. You can see the media is now reversing course. This was clipped over from us, courtesy of Patriots Are in Control on X. And he's sharing this story saying, look how things have changed, how quickly the tables have turned, saying the lawyer for wrongly deported Maryland man, underscored Maryland man, we were sitting here for months or weeks now saying, hey, he's from El Salvador. He's an El Salvadorian citizen. He's not here lawfully, legally at all. And he was deported to where he should be. But now, that was back in April 14th. Now they've switched this. Oh, the Salvadoran man. Look how that changes pretty quickly. Interesting how on May 6th, the language changes. And this is very important stuff, right? They're conjugating the language to try to brainwash the population. And now they have to admit fault. Now they have to backtrack and try to create some credibility for their fake news agency. So, and we're also learning a lot, right? This guy apparently has 2 orders of protections that his wife filed against him, Jennifer Vasquez, the same woman who's out there saying, give us money and support our family. He has a long history that we're finding out, including human trafficking, which we're going to get into. But what's funny about this is ABC News was actually doing the investigation on this. And for months now, they have been trying to sell us on the alternate version of this hoax. And here's what their reporting is now revealing for us. It tells us the Justice Department, this is the Trump Justice Department, is now investigating the Abrego Garcia traffic stop, right? So they went into the jail. We've already talked about this traffic stop where Abrego was caught in a car with no valid license, pulled over, cops come in, they shine the flashlight back there. They go, dang, you got a bunch of people back here, man. How many people are back here? And there was an extra row of people back there. So it was like 8 or 9 people. Don't know if they were men or women. He said that they were coming in on construction, saying they were traveling back from Texas to Maryland because they were going to go do some additional work and whatever. But as we're finding out, he didn't have a license, and that truck that he was driving didn't belong to him. It belonged to someone else. So federal agents are now investigating the Tennessee incident that appeared late last month they went into the Federal Correction Institution in Talladega, Alabama, to question this guy called Hernandez Reyes, who had an attorney present with him and was granted limited immunity. Okay, so this guy's going to spill his entire guts and might get a benefit out of it. Now, tell us everything you know about Kilmar. What were you doing? Why was he, who was he communicating with? The whole thing. Sources familiar with the interview said. So Hernandez, the guy who's in jail now, told investigators that he previously operated a, quote, taxi service that was based in Baltimore. And he claimed to have met Abrego Garcia around 2015 and claimed to have hired him on multiple occasions to transport undocumented migrants from Texas to various locations throughout the United States. The frequency and the time frame of these trips was not immediately clear, but multiple occasions, human trafficking. Wow. It's unclear whether prosecutors will gather enough evidence to bring charges against him, criminal charges. The interview of Hernandez, however, appears to be new and an aggressive step in the efforts to gather incriminating evidence about this guy, even as it resists calls for him to be provided typical protections. Give me a break. It's not typical to respond to such accusations through the American legal system. He already had his opportunity. He had a full hearing and a full appeal and another withholding order that was granted and abided by, that when he was sent to El Salvador. I know people say, no, he shouldn't have gone there. You can just read the order, look in the concluding paragraph. The judge said Guatemala. It's not a typo. A spokesperson for the DOJ declined to comment on this. Now, according to body cam footage, the Tennessee troopers discussed among themselves their suspicions. They go, yeah, this dude's got 9 people there. They have no luggage. They're not doing anything with construction, it looks like. Where are their tools? But Garcia was not even ticketed or charged. And we've made this point here many times, and it's a pretty disgusting thing. When you get pulled over for not having a valid license, when you get pulled over for anything, pick a reason, tint on your window, a wide right turn, okay, whatever it is, they pull you over, you get a ticket. And if you don't have a driver's license, many states will arrest you, charge you with driving on a suspended or revoked or canceled license, charge you with a misdemeanor, and impound your vehicle for 30 days until you get your license back and get it out. So this guy actually got more privileges than you. When you get pulled over and you're a citizen, you could be doing anything in the car. You could have, I guess, a bunch of people in there. They're not going to call the FBI and get permission to let you go. Can we let this guy go? Christopher Ray says, sure, let him go. No. They did that for these illegals, though. So they actually get more privileges than you, an American citizen in our country. Your car would have been impounded like that. Try it. See if the FBI lets you off. No. When asked, don't try it. This is not legal advice. When asked to provide proof of insurance, Abrego told officers, I got to call my boss because I don't know where the insurance card is. See what happens if you get pulled over and you don't have your insurance card on you and you don't have proof of insurance. You think you're going to get away without a ticket? Yeah, right. Audio from the police footage cuts out briefly after an officer asks who owns the vehicle. Now, the officers ultimately issued no speeding ticket, no violation at all. Have a nice day, sir. Sorry for the trouble. To drive on with just a warning about an expired driver's license. Can't even drive. No one in the car can drive. According to a report, speeding, the Tennessee Highway Patrol said troopers had contacted federal authorities. Just let him go. Tennessee Highway Patrol can confirm that a 2022 traffic stop of wife-beater Abrego, who was stopped for speeding on the I-40. Per standard protocol, the THP, Highway Patrol, contacted feds about this, and the Biden-era FBI, the agency that has the jurisdiction, who made the decision not to detain him. Yeah, just let him go. An attorney for Abrego called this weird dude called Simon. He said last week, well, I didn't see any evidence of a crime in the traffic stop, but the point is not the traffic stop. He says Abrego deserves his day in court. Bring him back. I have represented Kilmar for more than a month, and this is the first time I've heard his voice. Well, you can go down there. You can go visit him, I guess, I suppose. He has been denied the most basic protections of due process. No, he has not. He's already been found in court in a written order to be MS-13. And he appealed that, and the Court of Appeals found that too. Didn't reverse it. So he is already adjudicated MS-13. So that's done. He doesn't get another hearing on that. You want like 5 hearings until they find differently? It's already been determined. You want another trial on that? You want a trial with a jury to make that determination? He was already found to be not a citizen. You want a trial on that? So what would you like a trial on? Yes, we know. They want him to have an Article 3 trial with a full jury to answer these questions. There's no basis in the law for that at all. No other illegal alien has ever gotten those benefits. So they're trying to codify new precedent through the law and let the judges make that change, right? To basically have the judiciary create new, essentially statutory rights via judicial fiat. It's an insurrection via the ACLU gangbangers and the judges. So Sandoval, Simon, when it reached on Monday, he didn't want to talk about it. Yeah, because of course he doesn't want it, because his client has now 2 orders of protections, beating his wife when she's screaming about her kids and how she's being violently attacked in her home and the cops aren't doing anything about it. When details of the traffic stop were first publicized, Abrego's wife said, well, yeah, he sometimes does transport groups of fellow construction workers between job sites. Between job sites? You mean in different states? You mean like a job site in Mexico, from Mexico to Maryland, or from El Salvador or Venezuela to Maryland? Yeah. Jennifer said, well, he's imprisoned and no one can talk to him. The Trump administration has been publicizing his interaction with the police, saying despite a lack of corresponding criminal charges. And again, that's the whole thing. You don't need to charge him with the crime. If we could, we don't need to, but he doesn't belong in the country. That's not the standard. Like you can only be deported if you're convicted of a crime. That's not the standard at all. Never has been. Now the incident in Tennessee 3 years ago is under renewed scrutiny. The administration faces deadlines this week to answer discovery questions that just came out from Judge Zenus, which we'll check up on in a second, affirmed by the Supreme Court to, quote, facilitate the return. They always leave out the second half of that sentence, which was with due deference to the executive branch, as though Kilmar had not been wrongfully deported in the first place. And he wasn't wrongfully deported. You can read the order on 10/19/2019 or 10/10/2019 from David Jones. It says Guatemala, because his family was in Guatemala, where the nexus of his protection emanated from. Abrego's expulsion in March violated an order. No, it didn't. Read it. Abrego Garcia was initially sent to El Salvador's notorious CCOP prison, but is now in a different facility. Last month, the family filed a lawsuit after he was gone, right? They didn't file habeas because he was already gone. So they went into Judge Zenus's courtroom, which was a Democratic appointee, filed a claim based on the U.S. Constitution, whatever, and she ordered discovery. Now, the guy who owned the vehicle that Kilmar was trafficking in admitted that he was in the U.S. illegally. He told federal investigators from Homeland that he had previously lived in Maryland but moved to Houston. He said he operated a Texas-based business transporting people throughout the U.S. for $350 per person. Now, I don't ask questions, just pay in cash, whatever, I'll move you. In June 2020, he pleaded guilty to a single count of unlawful transportation of an alien, 18 months in prison, and he was deported. But he was back in the U.S. in 2022 because, it doesn't matter under Joe Biden, it's like wide open. And he was charged with another crime, illegal discharge of a firearm, according to state court records. He's like, well, I'll get out and I'll just come back anyways. After serving time in Texas, he was charged federally with illegally re-entering, and he pleaded guilty and he was sentenced to 30 months again. So multiple crimes, loans his car to Kilmar. Kilmar is going to go pick up some pupusas and some people. They're just going to come back and just, cram their faces with some pupusa calories and just lay some bricks or something, I'm sure. All right, so that is the latest from ABC. Quite shocking that they did some digging into this and that this is not coming from somebody else who is on the case, right? It's coming from ABC News, and they're calling him an El Salvadoran man. Now we see in the Zenus case, this came out of Judge Zenus's courtroom. We've been asking ourselves for quite some time, what is she going to do with this case? Because we saw all of these sealed filings. Remember this sealed joint motion for a discovery conference, local rules. Look, all of the media came in and said, can we please broadcast this? We really have a lot of interest. But a lot of other people trying to come in here, motion to intervene, unseal court records. All the media companies want to know about it. And a lot of this has been pretty much dead since April 30th. But today, fresh out of the oven, Judge Paula Zenus issued a new order. It's a short one, 2 pages. Everything was stayed for about a week while the plaintiffs, in this case, the ACLU gangbang lawyers, they were demanding that Trump's administration provide documents, provide witnesses, sit down for depositions, and all the other things. And that all got stayed after some stuff was filed under seal. Here is the latest. Judge Zenus says, all right, the court has reviewed the motion to intervene and unseal court records and a joint motion for a discovery conference. And here is what Judge Zenus is ordering. 1, parties and their responses to the motion to intervene are due by Tuesday on May 20th and replies by May 27th. So if you want to get in on this case, if you're the media, the DOJ can respond by those times and the judge will take them up in turn. The court also requires formal briefing of Trump. Trump, of course, is like, we're not going to give you any discovery. Are you nuts? We're not giving you our files. We're not sitting down for your depositions. Get out of here. We're a co-equal branch of government. So good luck forcing us to do anything. We don't respond to you, Judge Zenus. So they're saying, okay, well, legally that comes in the form of privilege and state secrets. They say, well, we're just invoking state secrets. We're invoking privilege. We're invoking the deliberative processes privileges. And so we're not talking to you. Okay, we don't have to do that. So accordingly, she says, well, if you're invoking those things, I want answers by Monday from you, Trump, and from the ACLU gangbangers, not to exceed 25 pages of exhibits addressing the factual and legal bases for those invocations of those privileges, including Kilmar's request for the court to conduct in-camera review, right? So the judge wants to say, I'll look at these stuff in chambers behind closed doors of the withheld documents. And on the same date, Trump shall provide a privilege log that we discussed previously. So Trump, if you're going to invoke those privileges and say you're not going to give us information, explain why. The court is also going to hold an in-person hearing on Friday, May 16th. Everybody will be there to discuss this, and so that should be good. We're going to deal with other resolutions and reset deadlines after the May 16th hearing. And lastly, writes Zenus, as this litigation proceeds, the court emphasizes the importance of transparency and adherence to procedural rules when you file things under seal. While provisional sealing was permitted in early stages of this case, the parties must now strictly comply with the rules. If you want to seal something, right? Trump filed a bunch of stuff under seal. She's like, all right, I allowed it, but now you got to justify it. Give me a compelling reason. If you file something under seal without a compliant motion to file under seal, we're going to strike it. And so let us know. If you don't file the motion to seal on this other one in your most recent filing, you got to update this by Friday this week. Otherwise, we're going to unseal that document. And so I'm in favor of unsealing all the documents. Now, I understand why Trump wants stuff under seal, but I think that we could see very clearly what's happening if we could see the documents. So that is from Judge Zenus. So we got a nice layout throughout the rest of May. We'll have some additional things happening here. Friday, May 16th, we'll have an actual hearing, and I'm sure that is going to be spicy and juicy indeed. Now, that was just one deportation case. So that was Kilmar, the Maryland man, who's now somehow transmogrified into the El Salvadoran man. Well, he was already sent out. But in a simultaneous case, this came out of Maryland. Remember that elsewhere, we hop on an airplane, go over to Washington, D.C., we had Judge Boasberg, also a judge who has been fighting against Trump from his perch on the bench and has actually held Trump in contempt, but given Trump an opportunity to purge that contempt if he complies with the court's illegal order. Remember that this judge already issued an injunction that was reversed, vacated by the Supreme Court of the United States. But he said Trump still needed to comply with that illegal order. And since he didn't comply with that illegal order, he can force him under the contempt rules to comply, and he can purge the contempt by complying with the illegal order, which is to bring everybody back who was on those airplanes. Now, Trump said, obviously, we're not going to do that. Your illegal order is illegal still, even though you're trying to tuck it under this contempt situation, and we're not playing this game. So we're in this case now in Washington, D.C., and we got some fresh filings out of the oven on this one, coming out from Pam Bondi and the DOJ. And here's what they're arguing in this one. In the deportation cases, remember that they certified the illegal gangbangers as a class. So just like you see those commercials on TV where they're like, if you've been impacted by mesothelioma or something like that, call this law firm and we'll help you get a bunch of money. Same thing here, except they're gangbangers, right? And they're like, well, if you want to break into America and violate her sovereign rights, we'll help you do it. We're gangbangers are us, ACLU lawyers. And so what they did is they certified, they got the entire class of gangbangers certified because Judge Boasberg said, well, yeah, they're all basically the same and they all need to be protected. But now this is Pam Bondi and Trump's DOJ saying, that's totally ridiculous, Judge. We oppose the class certification of the illegal gangbangers. And they sent this one back into the Judge Boasberg, who has already held them in contempt. They're saying, all right, Judge, listen, you know, even after the Supreme Court judge held that these plaintiffs here lack jurisdiction to even sue in your court, they are still here. They're persisting. Now they're joined by habeas petitioners. So they amended their claims, right? They changed all of their filings. Detained in El Salvador and throughout the nation. Now they seek to certify several classes of gangbangers based on these groups. They want class-wide relief, but this lacks merit, and they have done nothing in this case to cure the jurisdictional defects that the Supreme Court said exist here and that caused them to vacate your orders, Judge, your illegal orders in the first place. So you should not certify a class of gangbangers. Now, as explained elsewhere, none of the named petitioners in this lawsuit or class members are in this court's district at all. They're not even in D.C. Since there is no constructive custody either, since we're not in control of them, since they're in El Salvador, we don't have like fictional control over them. We don't have actual physical possession, but we have constructive possession because we control the contract, for example. This court, since we don't have either of those, you don't have jurisdiction, okay? You can't hear a habeas petition and you can't certify a class, Judge. Now, this is true of both those people who are detained in El Salvador and those detained in other districts across the United States. And similarly, the original named plaintiffs, they try to maintain their original claims. They say it's about notice, right? So this is like a constitutional due process claim. We didn't get enough time before we got deported, so our due process was violated because we had low notice. But that technical reframing doesn't give this court jurisdiction just because they say our due process suggests, well, our Constitution, I got jurisdiction over that. No. They admit they brought the exact same claims in the districts where they're confined. If they want to sue in Texas, they can. Go hog wild, sue all over the place. But why'd you go to D.C. to try to get in front of Judge Boasberg? We know why. And we know why he got these cases. Now, even if the court has jurisdiction, however, none of the classes that you want here even satisfy the rules of a class. They're not like the class rules are not set up for gang members, Judge. Why are you trying to? We're trying to help mesothelioma victims. Hello. All of the proposed classes are inundated with individual issues. None of the representatives are typical of the putative class members, which vary in innumerable but important ways. Right? If you're going to have a class action, there are certain elements you have to say, oh, yeah, that's a class. How do we know? Well, it's a group of people. They're clearly defined. We say, oh, okay, it's the people who've got mesothelioma versus not. Oh, okay, it's in this region or it's in this type of claim, this type of age group. They all got injured in this vehicle, okay? That device that they all used to blow dry their hair blew their faces off, okay? Whatever. It's all similar. Now, this is certainly true of the criminal custody subclass, which can include everyone from individuals facing a misdemeanor to those in state custody on death row, who will never likely be removed anyways. But the proposed classes also raise issues about the ascertainability. So, can you ascertain the full class? And numerosity. Are there enough of them to make a class, or is there like 3 of them? Now, because they are premised on inherently fluid definitions and being gangbangers and that are also dependent on others, it's hard to tell. For example, they can say, look, El Salvador can and has changed who is detained in CCOT. So like if you say it's everybody detained in CCOT, well, El Salvador changes that so that we can't ascertain who those are. So it's not a good defined class. And for the criminal subclass, the federal government may not even know who is in state custody, why they are in state custody, or how long they're going to be detained. Got all these states doing their own stuff. So premising class-wide relief on a putative class that is defined by speculation makes ascertainability, which is part of the like a requirement to be certified as a class, and numerosity, another element, impossible. They can't satisfy their burden, so we can't certify them as a class. Now, in addition, equity and the All Writs Act do not grant courts like you, judge, an alternative route to craft class action free of the strictures of the rules. You just make it up. Now, that is true for habeas petitions, which are also unfit for class actions. These are individual case-by-case petitions. This court should not expand class actions in a novel way to resuscitate the very claims that the Supreme Court already vacated because you don't have the power, judge. This court should deny the motion for class certification. And they give us some background. We're very familiar with this case, as we know. In March, Trump issued a proclamation. He said Venezuelan gangbangers are going to be identified as such and dealt with accordingly. But after the DC Circuit denied the motion, the Supreme Court came back down and said, Boasberg, you're wrong. You're illegal. You have no jurisdiction. You can't do any of these things. They said jurisdiction lies in Texas, in the District of Confinement. Yes, they're forum shopping. We know they're hunting for you, but they don't get your forum. The court further held that aliens are entitled, remember, to notice and opportunity to be heard that's appropriate to the nature of the case. They don't get 30 days of opportunity. They get just a brief opportunity, file, including notice that they're subject to removal and a reasonable time so they can actually seek habeas relief in their proper forum. Now, in defiance of that Supreme Court decision, Judge Boasberg doesn't care. He says, I don't care what SCOTUS says. I'm the president. I'm the judge. They persist. They're trying to anchor this habeas litigation outside of Texas. After an unsuccessful attempt at a third TRO, they amended their complaint. Now they're adding even new people. The claims for these new subclasses are brought under habeas now, which them saying, well, you've got constructive custody because you can control them in El Salvador. The first subclass are the people in CCOT. They're detained there. And we have all these petitioners. We got Frangel, Mata, and Andre Hernandez, and others. They're detained in CCOT, and their family members are filing petitions. So they're filing in DC with Boasberg. The second subclass is all non-citizens in criminal custody who could be subject to this order. And that is obviously overbroad because that is not just federal custody. It's all everybody in criminal custody, which could be all of state defendants as well. Now, this class has a single named representative, TCI, who's in state custody in New Jersey. They want a modification of the original class to be all non-citizens who could be subject. They want the original plaintiffs and more. Now, all of this is being done for the fourth time. They're seeking an order requiring the government to facilitate the return of everybody in CCOT and stopping the removal of any criminals anywhere. The government has already responded to this. They don't have the jurisdiction here, Judge, and you can't grant an injunction that is that broad. It's black letter law. You've got to have jurisdiction before you can start doing things. Hello? You can't just start acting on a case where you have no authority. In order to certify a class under the rules, we have to have a numerous class, right? It's got to be big so that we can't just individually join everybody. It's got to have same questions of law or fact. It's got to have plaintiffs that are typical of the class, and there's got to be adequate protection of the interest of the class, right? These are the 4 elements. Flashback to law school. Now, the party seeking certification must prove each element by a preponderance of the evidence, and they can't do that. Starting out, first of all, they cannot seek a habeas type of claim here in this district. Supreme Court already said this. You're in violation of it. They said this is a core habeas petition. You got to bring it in Texas. And in fact, because nobody is in custody in D.C., they vacated Judge Boasberg's orders. Nothing has changed. Only individual or class members that this court could have jurisdiction over are those being held in custody in this district. But that's not happening here. There is no evidence that any people are in this district. Not one exists. None of the people in this lawsuit are in D.C. All of them are either in custody in El Salvador or in other districts, or they're not in custody at all. So this court, you, Judge Boasberg, you lack jurisdiction to certify the classes or to adjudicate the claims. And for the other 2 subclasses, they say, well, some of them are in custody. But the United States doesn't have control over CCOT. And for the criminals, we don't have control over the states. So we can't make them a part of this class. So then they claim, well, in the future, they could be in the government's custody. But that is mere speculation, and that is insufficient. They have to have an actual claim in this court's jurisdiction, and it cannot be premised on some future speculative harm. The Supreme Court said this specifically. And they can get relief in their other districts. Just sue where they're being held, and they can go get relief. This illustrates why it's improper to create classes where they're not in custody. You lack jurisdiction, Judge. But even more shocking is the gangbangers' attempt to evade the Supreme Court's holding. As explained, they vacated the TRO. They said, you have no power, Judge, because your due process and your statutory claims must be brought in habeas. You can't dress this up, right? You can't put lipstick on a pig. We know what it is. It's a habeas claim. You can call it a constitutional APA claim. Call yourself whatever you want. We know you're into that. But it's not. It's habeas. Go file it in Texas. But the named plaintiffs for this case and this class are the exact same as the very first complaint with the same claims. The amended complaint is no different. They're just trying to morph it into something else, but it's the same. So how do they try to get it around the Supreme Court? They say it's about notice. Oh, well, we have to have proper notice before we can file habeas. They already have notice. They got it. They sued. We're in court. It's clearly evident they got notice because they got lawyers, and we're here. We're reading the documents. This moots the due process claims because they got due process. And even if they could maintain their due process claims, it's habeas. They can still make their due process complaints in habeas in Texas. Now, they seem to suggest that because they only challenge the notice, they can bring it here, and that is not actually habeas. But release is not the only remedy for habeas. They're saying, well, we're not asking for relief. We're just asking for a decision on the notice. They say, but notice alone, while it is core to due process, is meaningless without the opportunity to be heard. So the Supreme Court allowed due process habeas claims. And here it's difficult to see what their ultimate relief would be if they got notice other than some sort of change to their custody. So you can't just say it's notice. It's obviously notice for a hearing to challenge the detention. You can't just, well, it's only notice. That's the only thing we're fighting about. No, it's a habeas claim. So the claim must be brought in Texas. Now, ironically, they write, Trump's DOJ, they have done that, actually. They have raised splitting issues. All 5 of the named plaintiffs here have brought nearly identical claims in their home districts, right? So now they're playing both sides. Let's try over here, see what happens, and let's try over here. They're playing both parents. Let me go see what dad says over here. Let me go see what mom says over here. This alone precludes them from splitting their claims and being in this court. It requires certain things to be met. They haven't done that here, especially in class actions. Now, since they're bringing the same claims in this court as other courts, they can't be here because that's the right forum. Now, the similarities between their claims and the ones in the amended complaint are striking. They're habeas claims. They are trying to get out of custody. And since this court lacks jurisdiction, we can't set a class. Even if you think you have jurisdiction, Judge, this is not a lawful class, okay? There is no commonality. Those 4 elements of class certification we just saw. Commonality requires commonality. They got to have similar questions of law and fact. But that's not what is being alleged here. They can't satisfy this. One alien can test their membership in TREN, and others don't. The mere allegation that they've suffered a violation of due process is insufficient to satisfy commonality. And because due process is flexible, the dissimilarities inherent in each individual case means we got to get into the specific facts of each alien's case. This alien says, I'm not a gangbanger. Here's why. Well, we need a factual analysis for that. Same for all of the other gangbangers. They can't just make a broad claim that applies to all of them if they're all challenging their status. Nor is it true that the same defenses would apply to all of them, right? Not all of them are going to say, I was misidentified. I'm just a barber in San Francisco. Here, they had plenty of notice and the designation. No additional notice would be necessary at all. They've all already brought actions in Southern District of New York. They're suing in Texas too. And that's even though they don't have standing as a class. But now petitioners have not shown that their claims are typical of those either. So commonality, whether the claims are typical, they make no showing that anybody's going to remain in custody for a certain period of time. And so since everybody is a little bit different, we can't say they're all in the same class. And there's no guarantee that the CCOT class would have the same remedies as the other class representatives, right? Everybody's different here. We cannot treat them the same. Now, as another prerequisite to certification, we have to be able to know who is in the class. Can't be speculative. Well, I'm kind of entitled to a remedy because I'm a member of this class. It's got to be ascertainable. It's got to be definite. That's why you get the notices. Did you use this product? Okay, well, fill out this form by this date or else you lose the right to do it. So you got to get everybody bundled up. Absolute precision is not necessary, but we can't ascertain any of these people. These subclasses and putative classes cannot be ascertained. First of all, criminal custody. Merely because the government has designated an alien as a TDA member does not mean he's in custody. We want the people out of custody too. They're going to. We just don't have them yet. So there's a bunch of people we don't know about. And so you can't include them in this class, saying it's not specific enough. But what about the CCOT subclass? What about all the people there? Well, while the government can ascertain who was removed, it would require obtaining custodial records, and they are a sovereign nation. So we can't ascertain who is actually there in CCOT because they might have moved people out like they did with Kilmar. And so we've got issues here. We can't ascertain who these people are. So we can't make them a bona fide class. And habeas class actions are especially improper here. There is no alternative means to certify a habeas class, okay? They got to satisfy the rules. That's why we have them. Rule 23 says you got to do it. They say we can use equity principles and kind of make this up, but there's nothing that says that they can do that. All of the case law says follow the rules. Now, this innovation would circumvent individual rules and cannot be allowed. And even if there were no existing procedural rules for class actions, it's not appropriate to grant it here. It's unfit for class adjudications. The original origin, historical original basis of habeas was Latin, right? Habeas corpus is Latin for you have the body. It required the sheriff to bring the body before the court and certify the true causes of imprisonment, right? They took you into custody without lawful reason to do it. You petition, the sheriff brings you to the judge. Why do you have this man in custody? Well, he murdered 5 people last night. Okay. You have evidence of that? Yeah. All right. Well, it's good reason to have him in custody. Okay. Blackstone said habeas was directed to the person detaining another to explain the detention. And this is reinforced with one exception, saying the application can sometimes be signed by someone acting on his behalf, all this emanating from old law. But the petitioners here are acting as next friends of the unknown class members, right? So they're filing it almost on their behalf. but they're doing so without explaining why they cannot petition for themselves, right? Why can't they just file? That's insufficient. You can't petition as a next friend. You got to have an argument as to why you can file this on their behalf. So it's no wonder, because of all of that, that the Supreme Court has never held that a class relief may be sought in habeas, because it just doesn't make sense. It's you. You're challenging your detention, not everyone else's, because they've got their own reasons to challenge their detention. So they meekly assert that the Supreme Court has ruled on the merits, but nothing says there was a proper class. And the court even noted that even if a habeas class might theoretically be possible, you cannot assert the rights of class members who are not in custody yet. And so most of the remaining cases cited by the gangbang lawyers did not actually rule that a habeas class was proper, but it just approved of the concept in dicta, which is not necessary to the holding. And the remainder of the cases are also unpersuasive because they are contrary to the history and the practice of habeas. And so this court, you, Judge Boasberg, should not stray from the tenets of habeas here to certify novel classes that don't even meet the rules requirements. Signed here by Deputy Assistant AG Drew Ensign with the Civil Division at the DOJ, going into Judge Boasberg's courtroom. And so we'll see what the reply looks like from the gangbanger lawyers, and then we'll see what Judge Boasberg does. But very likely, he's going to try to keep this thing on track, force them as close as he can to facilitate the return of these people. And if Trump doesn't do it, hold him in contempt, issue sanctions. Of course, we'll be here covering it. We'll see what Trump does in response to this. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, so good updates on that one. Now, let's turn our attention over to this Diddy trial a bit. And then we got a third segment coming up on the other end of Diddy, which is Kash obliterating this crazy Democratic congresswoman. So stick around for that. But here is the latest on Diddy. Diddy has a problem, and his lawyer, someone close to his defense team, says it's a six-pack of white women. Oh, no. Now, Geragos is not officially on the defense team, but we know he was in court. We know he was talking with the other defense attorneys. And Geragos has really been the guy who's playing media point, right? He's not a part of the defense team. He's just running the camera game and sharing this out in the court of public opinion. But the judge was not happy about this, saying Geragos calls the prosecutors a six-pack of white women. Wow. So the race game is going to come out in full swing here. It's going to be a lot. Now, the judge was not happy about this, says Arun Subramanian says he called the remarks outrageous. And we know where this is going. So Geragos, not officially on the team, but he was on with Two Angry Men, and he co-hosted it with TMZ founder called Mark Levin. Now, on Tuesday, the judge told Geragos, we're still selecting a jury, that he would be listening and watching him in their chambers to make sure you don't say anything that's going to interfere with this trial. He said, I think this is ridiculous, the judge said. I think referring to the prosecution in this case as a six-pack of white women is outrageous. This would not be tolerated in any court from any lawyer anywhere across the nation. He says, you have one more listener for your podcast, he added. The judge is going to be listening in too. As long as you subscribe, he said, I'm all for it. Reminder, thanks for subscribing to our channel. Geragos' daughter, Tenny, is on Combs' legal team and has been a guest on the podcast, so he doesn't care, okay? Geragos has offered his opinion on a variety of topics. Prosecutors have said the video of Combs is going to be introduced. There was a request to withhold the video as evidence in the trial, but the judge denied that, of course. Now, Geragos defended his statements. He says, Your Honor, I think when you've got a black man who's being prosecuted and the client feels like he's being targeted, it's just an observation. They are white women, and there are 6 of them, so it's just like a six-pack. The prosecution asked the judge in a letter that we read yesterday to get this guy in control. And Assistant Attorney Christy Slavic, a member of the 6-woman prosecution team, outlined those concerns. He said that they're hopeful to have a seat of 12 jurors, 6 alternates by today, Wednesday, and we're coming back on Friday. They got very close. We'll hit the peremptories and then, of course, come back to see what our jury ultimately looks like. But here is what happened. Jury selection, day 3 in the Diddy trial, brought to us courtesy of Matthew Russell Lee reporting Inner City Press over on X at Inner City Press. He says we're here, day 3 jury selection, and the peremptory challenges, right? So the strikes of the jurors, those are going to be pushed to Friday, and so we'll get things settled later on in the week. But as it stands, we're waiting for the court to get on session and get underway. Suddenly the door bursts open. Pfft, judge walks in. All rise. We all stand up. Judge takes the bench. Please be seated. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. It's Wednesday. Where were we yesterday? Hopefully the jurors listened to my instructions not to hear about the Newsman case. Okay, so where are we? Maureen Comey, what do we want? Good morning, Your Honor. We propose that we do the peremptory challenges, not today, but on Friday morning, in case some of the jurors come up with new reasons why they're not going to be on the jury before then. The judge says, yeah, that probably makes sense. Don't want to give them too much time to think about it. Anything else before we bring them in? Defense attorney Combs says, we want HBO juror 29 out, Your Honor. We're not going to use a peremptory on him, but we think he should be struck. Tenny Geragos of our team was on emails with the production company of the HBO documentary, and we know that people were paid. One of our lawyers was sending emails back and forth with HBO. Judge says, well, will the documentary even come up at trial? Like, is it going to be relevant? I believe it will. Government. Judge says to the prosecutor, well, we didn't ask her about her pay. We didn't ask her, that juror, about that. What do you think? Shouldn't we exclude her? Comey's talking with the rest of the prosecutors. Okay, Judge, we agree. Judge says, okay, fine. Juror 29 is excused for cause. All right, thank you, Judge. Defense, Your Honor, also, we looked it over yesterday. We also think the juror who works for Her Justice, we saw that's like a women's legal aid society, which we know is going to be for domestic violence and related items, says, well, she was before that legal aid society for juveniles in family court. She did not disclose that on question 14. She should have put that on there. She didn't tell us. She also didn't disclose any legal training, saying I was an intern at legal aid, and I know the office managers there have a lot of input. Judge says, okay, well, are you saying the juror lied on her form? Well, I think she lied in the individual questioning, not in the group questioning. Well, maybe she didn't get training in the law there. That's why she didn't say that. She was just like an intern or something, just working there. Well, based on my experience, Your Honor, as an intern there for 3 months, I think she did. Okay, like I was there, I was an intern there. They got training, so that's what they did. Well, when did the defense become aware of this? Yesterday. Prosecutor says, Your Honor, she's an office manager. Office managers don't get legal training. And that depends. I ran my legal office, so, I know how that goes. So anyways, I find no reason to think she lied. Now, maybe the defense just doesn't like her prior employment at that law firm, but that's why you have peremptories. So we're not going to get rid of her. She stays. And anything else? No, nothing further. All right. So bring in the jurors, please. All rise. We are now seated. The jurors are now in the courtroom. Judge announces and calls the case. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the case of the United States versus Sean Combs. I expect this case to run 8 weeks. Now, the way this is going to happen, just like we saw in days 1 and 2, which we covered here, is we're going to ask you a series of questions, and we're going to move you into a different room. We're going to do group questions and individual questions. You're going to look at a binder. If you recognize anybody in the binder, then just let us know. We'll ask you some follow-up questions. This is a sex case, so if there's anything problematic in there, ask to come up and talk to us off the record, all the things. All right, you're excused. They bring him next door. All right, so we're going to begin here with juror 146. We're going to bring them in here. But first, before we get into that, judge says, Miss Geragos for the defense, how long was juror 131 working at legal aid? Defense says 3 years, Your Honor. Now, Miss Comey implied she worked on office supplies, but I got to say, I think it's more than that. She wasn't just like refilling the copy paper. Judge says, all right, well, she was an office manager. There might be some, I'll think about it. Also, her justice also provides legal services, Your Honor. She disclosed it, so I think she's safe. Okay. All right, bring in 147. 146 comes in. He's a male. Welcome, sir. Says you had a family vacation on here, but you're back. All right, look at the binder. You recognize anybody in there? No. All right, anybody have any objections? No. Okay, he's on. Juror 220 comes in. Hi, welcome. She said, well, my mom's a Bronx guidance counselor, and my father was a substance abuse counselor. Now he works for a company that sells cannabis. Well, what's the name of the company? She says cannabis. She says, okay. And my stepfather was a New York State parole officer. Your Honor, could you ask her about question 31? She says, oh, yeah, we're alumni of the same high school. Went to Mount St. Michael's, you just know. Defense, Your Honor, may we approach on this? They walk up to the judge's bench. They come back. Judge asks her a question. Do you remember retweeting a meme about Mr. Combs? Defense did their due diligence. They combed her social media. Most likely. It was a picture. Do you remember what you reposted? No. Well, why didn't you mention it in your questionnaire? So I don't know. I was just doom scrolling. Doom scrolling, says the judge. The hell's that? Moving around the internet, questioning my existence and the future of humanity for hours on end. Doom scrolling. Okay, well, I don't know what that is. All right, thanks for being here. All right, he leaves. He's in the pool. Next question. Juror comes in. Yeah, I work at Acme Supermarkets, which is a thing. This guy Bugs Bunny. You didn't answer if you could discuss matters of a sexual nature with fellow jurors. He just sits there in silence. Sir, I said you didn't answer whether you could discuss matters of a sexual nature with fellow jurors. Okay, you're excused. Thanks for coming in today, sir. Thank you. You're out. Now, next, 224. A relative, Your Honor. A relative of mine works security. He worked in buildings. Like what, banks or like parking garages? No, neither of those. Prosecutor asks, could you ask if this person has seen news about the case? Juror says, well, I heard he was accused of trafficking. That's about it. Mr. Geragos, any questions? No. All right. In the pool. Next juror comes in, female. Your Honor, this would be hard for me. I have to pick my daughter up from school every day. You don't have anybody else that can pick your daughter up? No. All right, you're excused. 263 comes in. Yeah, Your Honor, my family's in the security alarm business. We deal with law enforcement and messy situations. You identify with law enforcement? Yeah. All right, you're excused. 268, 275 are not here. They didn't show up. Okay, 279 comes in. She's a woman. Well, I have a close friend whose son works at 300 Records, which is a rap and hip hop label seen there. But I didn't see him on this list, so. And I have another friend, has a son who's in country music down in Nashville called Aiden Canfield. She's excused, but she was plugging all her friends. Okay. The clerk says, all right, yeah, Judge, to clarify, the jurors who were not here were told not to come by agreement of the parties. So they didn't show up without cause. They just agreed. Next juror comes in. All right, ma'am, tell us about you. Yeah, hi, I'm a teacher, middle school. I work at Manhattan School for Children. Yeah, I saw the footage from the hotel, and I said he would be guilty, but, I'm from the South. Well, I was told how you can catch a case and everyone turns against you. I can be fair, she says. She's in the pool. Next juror is a female. Says, I work at the Bronx Arts and Science Charter School. I take trainings, and I seen the Cassie video on the internet. But did he do it? I don't know. I have 2 daughters, So you have a bias, you think? Yeah, excused. Female. Yeah, Your Honor, I don't do social media. I never talked about these issues with strangers, but I think I could. She's in. 295 is another woman. Answered on the questionnaire about a personal history. Can you answer much here? Well, it depends how much you want to know. Well, I'm going to ask about what happened. She says, well, I better come up and talk to you then. They go up, talks, comes back. Says, my parents are doctors. I went to law school. Do you practice? Well, for my husband's financial services firm. My brother-in-law, who was in Russia, was mugged. He was beaten and hospitalized. And I think my brother had a desk appearance ticket for marijuana. I had a grandfather investigated for organized crime in the Bronx. Do you have any insight into racketeering? No. Defense says, Your Honor, can you ask about 26? Yeah, sure. You saw the video? I did. But I still think I can be fair. You know, as an attorney, I feel a deep ethical duty to do that. Wow, that's beautiful. She's in the pool. Juror 300 comes in. Your Honor, going to be hard for me to be impartial here. He's out. 303. I worked at Sarah Rita's guarding the New York Historical Museum. Now, about that company, Sarah Rita's, you have any positive or negative feelings? Negative feelings. My supervisor thought men were gods and women were peasants. Also, my brother was convicted of guns. And I have a negative view of law enforcement. So you're excused. Okay, bye. Thanks for being so honest. Well, I'll bring him next one. 307. Oh, yeah, I've heard about the case. Where'd you hear about it? From you, Your Honor. He's like, yeah, good answer. Clever. Okay, she's in the pool. 316 is a male. He comes in. Your Honor, I feel like I should not be in the jury for this guy. Why? Well, I don't know. I don't have anything against him. So you think you should be on or not be on? He says. He's looking at Diddy. He's like, I don't know. All right, you're excused. Get out of here. Another male comes in, and Judge Submarinian laughs at him. He says, hello, sir. And how do you know the judge? He says, we did antitrust class actions together. I also knew former U.S. Attorney Berman. So how do you know the judge? Like they know each other. Do you know anyone on this list? Yeah, I may have worked for Diageo. And I've had jury trials, and I believe in paying it back. A longtime client in a singular industry will require counseling in regular hours in the next few weeks. It would be difficult for them. He says, yeah, I know. You work around the clock. You work hard. He says, I was up last night. Well, and I'm supposed to testify before the Judiciary Committee. But I think that they would understand if I was here. Defense, Your Honor, I have a question for this dude. Passes it forward. Judge says, is your client going to be ill-served, or is the relationship going to be impaired if you're on this trial? It may be, Your Honor. It's a transaction case. He leaves. Government says, Your Honor, he seems unbiased, but they might have an outsized influence on other jurors. Like, so some kind of heavy hitter came in there, and he's going in front of the Judiciary Committee, big name. He might have an outsized influence on other jurors. Everyone's going to be paying attention to that guy. Defense says, well, I have no issue with his relationship with the court, but I'm concerned about his client. So that guy is also excluded. And it sounds like that is the day from Inner City Press. So we get an abrupt stop from him, and he explains that jury selection is going to continue May 9th on Friday, and will, of course, be back for that. And so once again, thank you to Inner City Press for giving us the deets on the jury selection. We've got a big enough pool, so they'll issue their peremptories, and then we'll whittle it down on Friday. And then on Monday, we'll be back with opening arguments, and it should be good. We'll see what Diddy has to say after that six-pack of white women starts with their opening statements. We'll be here to cover it. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, so we got that. We got one final update on the day, my friends. And then we'll hear from you. And let's see what's coming up right now. Here is this one with Kash Patel. Yeah. Kash Patel unloads on a Democrat who is suddenly under fear of attack from the FBI. She, of course, led the impeachment efforts against President Trump in one of the impeachment attempts. And now, since she's lost control of the lawfare operation that was conducted by the FBI and the DOJ, she apparently is freaked out. And she's got to lace into Kash Patel, who is in front of Congress today testifying. And he didn't take it for a minute. Here's what it sounded like.
Agency. I was an impeachment manager for President Trump's second impeachment. It was a sad solemn duty. And so
You are a sad, solemn duty. That's what we think of you.
I wanted to ask you about that. Mr. Patel, as you and the president continue to weaponize and investigate his perceived enemies, as you follow this blueprint, when can I, a former impeachment manager, expect the FBI at my door?
Ma'am, you want to know who was targeted by a weaponized FBI? Me. You want to know how and why?
Well,
You
maybe
want to know
need
what I'm doing
write
to
a book
fix it?
about that. Let me move on.
Well, you should
Change
read the
topics.
book because there's no enemies
So-
list on that book.
So
There are
you-
people that violated their constitutional obligations and their duties to the American people,
That's good. You
and they
gave
were
them due
rightly
process.
called out.
I'm
And
changing
you should
topics.
give that book to every one of your constituents
I'm
so they can
changing
read
topics.
about it.
I won't be doing that.
That's their loss.
During your Senate confirmation hearings, you repeatedly denied having any involvement as a private citizen in the firing of FBI officials who engaged in the prosecution against January 6th insurrectionists, the violent rioters who beat and killed Capitol police officers.
What? That is a lie. What is the name of the officer that they killed? Are you going to say it was Brian Sicknick, you lying representative from Pennsylvania? Because even the Capitol Hill police said he died of natural causes. It's on their website. She's a liar. Straight up. Is she going to say it was the suicides of the other Capitol police who died after the event? No Capitol 6 cop was killed on January 6th. And the lie about Brian Sicknick was a lie. He died the next day of natural causes. The coroner said the same. She's shameful.
And whom you referred to as political prisoners. Since then, multiple whistleblowers have come forward, and we know that you likely committed perjury. At the same hearing, you claimed you were not familiar with Stu Peters, an anti-Semitic Holocaust denier, despite the fact that you appeared on Mr. Peters' podcast 8 separate times.
What's up,
8
Stu?
times. And you claimed not to recall. Mr. Patel, my second question is, should we worry more about your memory or your veracity?
We should worry more about your lack of candor. You're accusing me of committing perjury. Tell the American people how I broke the law and committed a felony.
You did.
Have the audacity to actually
No,
put the
all
facts
right, then
forward
the answer is
instead of
both.
lying for political banter so you can have a 20-second
answer
donation hit.
The answer is both.
Yeah.
I believe that the
The
men and
answer is
women of the
you're
country
failing,
speak.
not
I
me.
reclaim my time.
Go ahead.
Oh, what's wrong? What?
Mr. Patel, I believe that the members of the FBI, and I know many of them, many retired, 38,000 people, as you say, it's a little less than that now, deserve the very best, deserve extraordinary independence, deserve freedom from the fears of being investigated, the freedom of coming forward to make sure they're doing their job.
Okay, she's a liar. Our entire country deserves better than her. Representative Madeline Dean is still creating and promulgating that hoax that Capitol cops were killed on January 6th. She is a liar through and through. And if she's not lying through her teeth on this, which I think she is, then she's a moron who is not somebody who properly investigated the facts of the so-called attack on the Capitol. And she should resign because she's incompetent. So she's either a liar or incompetent. Either one is not good for Pennsylvania, but we think she's a liar. So shout out to Kash Patel.
Agency.
And it's very nice how the attitude changes once you've already gotten in, right? When you're trying to get confirmed, you're like, yes, Congressman, yes, Congresswoman, whatever. Now you're like, listen, you lunatic, you think you're going to get money from this 20-second fundraising surge? I hope you enjoy it. Maybe you should read the book for once if you can read. So we're happy to see that from Kash. Now, what we're also noticing is that Democrat and the people like her who are part of the impeachment efforts, they weaponize the FBI and the DOJ to levels that we've never seen before. And Just the News reported this, saying that the Biden memo let feds target Americans for non-criminal behavior. So you don't even break the law. Now you're under scrutiny. We already saw this. Homegrown domestic violent extremism and religious motivated violent, all of the different extremisms, which they created to come and attack you, calling us all disinformationists and conspiracy theorists for daring to question their governance from on high. But Just the News says, yeah, they released this full memo, and I'll share it with you. You can see it is right here. And shout out to Rick D for sharing this over on the Lodge chat, saying the stunning breadth of the mandate was disclosed when Tulsi Gabbard recently released the full unredacted version of this document. It's called Strategic Implementation Plan for Countering Domestic Terrorism. The June memo exposed for the first time the intelligence and law enforcement framework that led the FBI to monitor and probe conservative Catholics and parents at the schools. The directives gave to the DOJ and the FBI the drive and executive action to ban assault weapons, to rein in ghost guns, and all the things. And this was their predicate. And we talked about this like every new quarter, there was a new software update. We're rolling out a new DVE we're working on this time. Hey, new edition, new edition. And it was a total scam. So here it was really just to marginalize and attack all of their political opponents, many of whom were you and me. Strategic Implementation Plan for Countering Domestic Terrorism. Here is what it says. This plan that's approved by the deputies coming out from Joe Biden and Lisa Monaco and Chris Wray and all of those hack individuals provides direction and guidance for the implementation to counter terrorism and gives you the appropriate elements and reaffirms the 4 pillars of our strategy to address the rule of law and American values. Throwaway paragraph. Great. So here they say what we're going to do: produce on a regular basis analytic products that focus on transnational aspects and other threats. We're going to measure performance of our efforts. We're going to share information, and we're going to illuminate all of the domestic terrorism that we're rooting out across the agencies and bring it front and center. How can we identify the financial activity associated with domestic terrorism, right? Everybody became a domestic terrorist all of a sudden, and everybody was involved. Oh, look at that. USAID right there. Oh, yeah, there's that money, baby. Lots of money coming in. So they're going to strengthen domestic terrorism prevention. They're going to highlight resources, create partnerships, create a one-stop website, probably cost $50 billion. They're going to have a suicide prevention hotline and more digital literacy programming to combat online disinformation and DT recruitment narratives. They're going to channel funding, look at this, towards digital literacy programming. What the heck does that even mean? Someone should send it to that congresswoman who can't read Cash's book. The intended impact is going to create coordination between local offices to address threats, right? It's just paying off their hacks all over the place under the guise of stopping terrorism. The U.S. government wants to prevent domestic terror acts, and we're going to share information about this. We're going to create multilateral fora, whatever that means, to address terrorist content online. So they're going to create like little chat groups, like little working teams, and we're going to engage with the United Nations. Look at all these organizations. Oh, makes you sick. Global Counterterrorism Forum, the Connect 5 Country Ministerial Team, Justice Home Affairs Ministerial. I don't know any of these people. And we're going to make specific requests to counter terrorism and online radicalization. Yeah, okay. Look, I'm for not being attacked by terrorists in America, but none of this was about actual terrorism. They weaponized this against us. They called us harmful and dangerous on this channel via YouTube. And we know that YouTube was getting pressure from the White House and guys like Rob Flaherty over there. So they're going to ensure screening and vetting processes are considering the full range of threats and more. And so you see the list, right? This came out. This was being used to attack all of us every single day. And now we're seeing the truth about it. So Kash Patel and Pam Bondi were out this morning. They were announcing a major operation to go after the child predators, which is a huge problem that the Biden administration overlooked. They just enabled hundreds of thousands of children to come across the border and be trafficked off into oblivion. A sick situation that is now being corrected. Here's what Kash said about it today.
our children, if you harm our children, you will be given no sanctuary. There is no place we will not come to hunt you down. There is no place we will not look for you. And there is no cage we will not put you in should you do harm to our children. The prioritization of this administration and General Bondi has made it abundantly clear to child predators, you will be hunted down and you will be prosecuted. And that is a refreshing thing to hear for the men and women who do this work tirelessly. And it's also an acknowledgement of the safety that we look forward to bringing America.
All right. And it is good to see some progress in that development, in that role. And this morning on the Membo stream, we heard a clip of Pam Bondi saying that they're digging into the Epstein files, and they have thousands of videos of, they say, Epstein with other people, other underage kids, which is horrible. So we're hopeful we see more coming from them, but it's nice to see Kash Patel out front and center and slamming it back against the Democrats. Hopefully more will be coming soon. All right, my friends. Well, it has been a beautiful stream. Happy Wednesday. A little bit of a shorter one today, but the news was a little light in the legal dockets, as you could see. But here's what we've got. We got an update. If you're just joining us, we did hit some Kilmar news. The media seems like they're moving on from that. He's no longer Maryland man. He's now Salvadoran man. And we got new filings from the DOJ, some briefings in the deportation cases. So we got some stuff scheduled up for the rest of May. And then we also have a new response from Pam Bondi and the Trump DOJ, which was going back to Judge Boasberg, saying we cannot certify gangbangers as classes for habeas corpus petitions. So a nice filing from the DOJ on that one. We'll see what Boasberg does with it. Diddy jury selection wrapped up pretty quickly today. We can see, looks like we got a full pool. We'll come back on Friday, issue those peremptories, and then we'll have opening arguments coming up on Monday. But man, it's getting fun. 6-pack of white women versus Sean Diddy Combs, and that's going to be a doozy. So we'll keep our eye on that. Meanwhile, Kash Patel not taking any guff from hack Democrat representatives in Congress. And now, my friends, it's time to hear from you. What a beautiful day it is. I hope you're accomplishing everything you set your mind to this week. And we appreciate you being here and supporting the show and joining us here on the day. Let's see who's joining us on the tubes. Hey, what's up, Donut and John? Thank you guys for clipping for us today. You're amazing. We got some new membos coming in, courtesy of Mock Schnell. It's hump day. Happy hump day, my friends. It's Wednesday. And we're grateful to have you here. A reminder, if you haven't become a membo, consider it and become a membo. We had some great streams this morning, including conversations about Adams and this officer riding in a pig car and tons of other things. It was a lot of fun. All right. So, hey, Ravicus shared this one. World exclusive. Advisor admits that Prince Andrew was doing bad things to underage girls. Epstein ties revealed, courtesy of James O'Keefe, man. Shout out to James O'Keefe. Is he back out of hiding? That's a big story. So I haven't seen the story yet, but yeah, I mean, if he's got an Epstein story, it's a big one. Hey, what's up, Mizzy M? Thank you, Mizzy M. Go get him, Rob. We're doing it together, Mizzy M. Thanks for supporting us as we do. We appreciate you being here. Yeah, it was a good one today. Kilmar, busted again. Hey, Ma the Meatballs. Ma the Meatballs. LOL. Good to see you, Milo. Yeah, we're definitely going to be having a meatball extravaganza on Saturday. So mark your calendars. I think Saturday. We'll see what Mama wants to do, but I'm pretty sure it's Saturday. Hey, Trolling Goals. Thank you for supporting our show by upgrading your membership and supporting us with a little bit more financial love. Trolling Goals. We appreciate you. Thank you for doing that. We'll see you tomorrow on the Membo stream. Hey, what's up, Chubby? Says ABC didn't research anything. They just finally read what the White House and non-MSM have been showing and saying all along, from Chubby. Yeah, and they're trying to like save face now because they have a news agency that they're supposed to, have some credibility behind. God bless Texas. Sam in Texas is here. What's up, Sam? Bringing in Al Miria. Welcome, Al. Texas Rose is here. Texas Rose. Meet Sam in Texas. Lillian Counter. What's up? Eric Harrison writes software. Welcome, Eric. And Sony Sains in the house. Great to see you. Thank you, Sam in Texas, for bringing in a bunch of new Membo friends. One old guy's opinion says, can Boasberg, thank you, one old guy. Don't know what that one says, but thank you for the donut today. Bodie, did Trump get his $450 million back from New York? No, not yet. That's still held in bond. That appeal is still working its way through. Tish James is still celebrating that victory. What's going on, Mock Schnell? Great to see you. We got 20 new Membo friends coming in, courtesy of Mock Schnell. What's up? Vex Vixen is here. Almost botched that one. Thank you, Vex Vixen. Anne Marie Allen. What's up, Printer God? We got Steve VC, Eric Sean, Dumar Gaming, Garrett Pace, Aaron Wagner, Ganzilla Reactions, Chris Sayer. Please enter a name is here. Michael Stetson. What's up? Pat D, Rex Futuri, Kellen Miller, DJ Divers. We got Carly, Molly, Simply Susan, and Dave Youngson. Gifted Membos, courtesy of Mock Schnell. Thank you, Mock Schnell, for bringing in 20 new Membo friends. One old guy says, when will SCOTUS get tired of all the BS from these psychotic inferior court judges? I don't know. Yeah, I think John Roberts was doing a talk today. Maybe that was tomorrow. I think it was today. Well, we saw that yesterday. We got a good ruling from them yesterday. They granted the stay on the trans ban case, so that's good. Hey, NY says, Rob, to represent a client, don't you have to have a signed agreement? The actual is just assuming representation. So, yeah, I mean, you talk to an ethics attorney about how this works in your particular state, but there are situations where you don't actually need that signed retainer. Like a signed retainer or a signed fee agreement is the best practice. But there are situations like if somebody calls you and like you're hiring, you don't need to fill out the paperwork right then and there. You can file a notice of appearance for that client. You're representing them. As long as you're following the rules, it's best practice to memorialize it, but it's not like you have to have the fee agreement in order to represent the person. But it is best practice, and most people do it that way. But there are times, somebody's like, hey, man, I'm on the way to jail right now. I'm in jail right now. Okay, man, I'll be there in 5 minutes. And you're there. You show up for an initial appearance and you don't have the paperwork. NY says, isn't it something in federal and state law that requires to put on record they're retained to represent a client? Yeah, that's separate. So that's separate than a fee agreement. That's called a notice of appearance. So that is what you submit into the court. And we read an example of that yesterday. So like a lot of the time, judges don't even care about the fee agreements. They say, well, like you'll represent a client, you file your notice of appearance, which is an official record to the court that you're representing that person, but you're not attaching a fee agreement or anything. Like you're not. And you can even go back to the judge. My client is not honoring the fee agreement. They're not paying me. They said they'd pay me every month and they're not. Judge goes, I don't care. Get out of here. Did you enter your notice? Yeah, that's your problem. Go figure it out. Look, I want to get off the case. Why? Because my client's not paying me. That's your problem. Go figure that out, right? Rick D, what's up? Says Chicago University professor cancels midterms, encourages students to instead attend an anti-Trump rally. It's always an anti-Trump rally, right? It's never like a pro-Trump event. It's always like that. Midterm canceled. This country's in an emergency, says this professor. Oh my gosh. Should never teach anybody ever again, unless the course is in hystericism. The Trump administration is kidnapping people off the street and deporting them to federal prisons. Oh my gosh. What kind of class is this? Like how to ingest soy 24/7 every day until you turn into Buttigieg. One old guy says 6 white women is 6 less than small town, southern town. From Diddy's team's point of view. Thank you, one old guy, for the comments. Object Class Keeter says, I wonder how many of the self-described biased are actually biased versus saying the right things to be excused. Doubt anyone wants to be there for 8 weeks. Yeah, I can imagine that. Although if you're on the Diddy trial and you that's interesting. That doesn't happen every day. Now, it is interesting on the bias, like that one guy. He's like, well, like, do you want to be on it or not? It's like, I just don't really know. I don't know. It's like, what's going on in your brain, dude? Should be listening to that. Too bad we can't tap into the audio on that one. What's up, Captain Patriot? Honest question, can't every single person that was arrested and charged on J6 super slander and defamation when they call them insurrectionists? I mean, you could make the argument. I don't know where you'd sue, and it depends who you're talking about. So, like, if you're responding to the woman who we just listened to, she was in Congress, so she can say basically whatever she wants. She can call them. She was on the bench, up there on the. She's got legislative immunity, so she can call them whatever she wants and not get charged on that basis. But there might be arguments that you could sue. Yeah, like if they came out and they said somebody was an insurrectionist, first of all, I was never charged with that, and I was pardoned by that, and I was alleviated of that. I still think that you might find a jury that would say, well, the pardon doesn't eliminate the allegation. And some people could interpret that your charge was a charge of insurrection. So I don't think it's a slam dunk case, but regardless, if she's in Congress, she's immune. So you're not suing her. B.H. Williams, where were the Republicans on that committee demanding that she retract her words? Take her words down, spineless cowards. They just sit there like bumps on a log. They do nothing. They do nothing. Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs. The Democrats are good in Congress because they turn it into a circus. Republicans just sit there like babies and take it. Hey, Sheila the Pooh, what's up? 10 membos coming in. Thank you, Sheila, for bringing in 10 new friends. Look who's coming in. We got Chris L. What's up, Don? Brian Phillips, Michael Drum, Itty Bitty Exo Kitty. We got Diana Arcio. Always Under Pressure is here. Strider Schwartz and Don McDonald, gifted membos, courtesy of Sheila Pooh. A million hugs to you. We've got this one from our friend Glenn Croy. 21 months, Glenn. Amazing to see you. Thanks for being here for so long. Says, I'm feeling extremisms from political prosecutions. You're feeling extremism from that. In other words, like the fact that they prosecuted everybody politically created people who said that the government is rotten. Yeah. Waldo, 31 months as a membo. Better late than never. Great to see you, Waldo. Thanks for being here for so long, man. 21 and 31. That's a long time. We've been through some stuff together. Sheila Pooh. What's up, Sheila? My brother said today he has one thing he is upset about with Trump. Nothing yet about a cleanup effort in East Palestine after the train derailment. Oh, in Ohio. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. We haven't seen much about that. And what's JD done on that, right? Where's he been on that? I don't know what the latest is on that, but that is true. That was a big deal. And that kind of got forgotten about, I think. Thank you for that, Sheila. Shout out to your bro. Marilyn Simpson. Thank you, Marilyn, for supporting us even harder by upgrading your membership on YouTube. We appreciate you for doing that. Great to see you. We got Serrano Guardias. Says the TMZ lawyer is Harvey Levin, not Mark Levin. Mark Levin would not be happy with that confusion. Oh, I don't think that was me reading that, right? That was the TMZ lawyer. That was on the Diddy case. Yeah, TMZ founder Mark Levin. I know Mark Levin. Yeah, it's not so that they screwed that up. Mark Levin. Mark. Maybe he'll sue their booties. All right, thank you for that one. Yeah, shout out to Mark Levin. Londo. Hello, Rob. Did you hear that? I did, loud and clear. Thank you, Londo. Doan says, it's still too soon to tag Kash and Pam as lame ducks with the last decade of rampant criminality and corruption to sort out and to prosecute. Yeah, we're still pretty early in this game. I know it doesn't really feel like that because we're moving at light speed here. It hasn't even been 6 months, though. Like, not even 6 months. And we're just warming up. We're just stretching out. Nancy H. Newton, hey, please note the message above. Love to the family here. Thank you, Nancy Newton. We love you back, and thanks for being a part of the fam. We appreciate you. Hey, BR Mark, brother Mark. Thank you, Mark, for becoming a supporter. Great to have you, brother. And we'll see you tomorrow on the members only morning stream Thursday morning. It's going to be a great one. And we're looking forward to seeing you. And grab the members only stream from this morning. It was a good one. Rick D. And students at Columbia have once again assaulted security and taken over the building. Are they setting up camps now? It's ridiculous. Yeah. And then they'll get mad if there is enforcement to stop the camp. Wild times. Nancy Newton. Hey, they're promoting insurrection. My head is duct taped for fear of explosion. Yeah. Wrap it up. extra tight. It's good to see you, Nancy. They are, right? The judges, I think, are promoting insurrection. These protesters are supporting insurrection. Everything is insurrection these days. There's a very low-flying helicopter outside, as you could hear. Londo, what's up? Hey, how's your mama doing after the surgery at the end of January? Knees and hips good? You know, she's still coming through that, actually. Yeah, she had a little bit of a, I guess you call it a complication. So her knee she's still recovering from it. So I'll let her explain it. She's mobile. She's good. She'll be up here. She'll be slicing and dicing and meatballing and everything up here in a minute in no time. But yeah, it's actually been a little bit slower of a recovery than I think she would have liked. But thank you for asking about it, Londo. Thanks for sending some good healing energy right into my mama's knee. Get in there. We appreciate that, Londo. She's doing well. She'll be up here. We're gonna do like a full day of meatballs. She sent Alexis the recipe. She's like, do you know what's on this? I'm like, no, but I know it's gonna be a lot. She's like, I think it says like 60 Roma tomatoes. I'm like, oh, that's it? Because my mom's gonna bring the other 60, So it's gonna be a lot. Captain Patriot. We need to change that because it sounds like they can call us whatever they want. But if we call them something, we can be jailed or sued. Yeah, that happens a lot. Well, they call it like domestic homegrown violent extremism, right? Your language is illegal and bad, but their language is allowed. They can call you insurrectionist, but if you misgender them, you get the death penalty. That kind of situation. My friends, thank you for sending in. Whoa, thank you for sending in all of those comments and donos. Welcome to new members. Thank you for supporting our work here, keeping this show on air, my friends. We're grateful for you. And let's say hello to our friends on X as well before we wrap it up on the day and go over to locals. We got, I think, Fred is over here. What's up, Fred? Rob, why are you the only human being on earth that knows the judge wrote Guatemala, not El Salvador? I don't know. Either I am a giant moron or everyone else is. And you know what we think about that answer here. So thank you, Fred, for your endorsement. Just read it. I'm open to changing my opinion on it. If somebody can show me some fact or some document anywhere, just some document anywhere that corrects the error that the judge wrote about. If it's a scrivener's error, if it's a mistake, if it was a copy and paste, that's their only explanation. Their only explanation, really, their only response is that the Supreme Court, or rather the DOJ, basically affirmed the mistake. But it was a mistake. It doesn't undermine the mistake. The fact that it was basically accepted doesn't undermine the logic of the original ruling. And the attorney who made that original interpretation, called Eraz Ruvini, was fired, and they walked him out of there. So there's many reasons why the DOJ is doing what it's doing, but you can just read the order. It's not me saying that. Just read it yourself. Don't even need to be a lawyer. It's not that complicated. The judge wrote it down there in the bottom section, and it's tied logically to the entire opinion. Kilmar had protection against being deported because he was a part of a group that provided him that protection. That group was his family. Where was his family? In Guatemala. So he had to be protected from being sent out. And the only basis for withholding was for Guatemala. He wanted to also be withheld from El Salvador, but didn't make the claim for that in the filing. Practically, any withholding was a victory at that time because he was not declared AEA. Now he is. Now he's gone. So it makes total logical sense, but they just, this is a thing that happens in the law, right? And people will do this in the law. People just because, like, everybody just follows whatever everyone said. Well, the Supreme Court, oh, okay. I don't care what they said. Is there an argument here? Okay, then make the argument. What's up, Rob? Hey, Rob, Grok says 5 were killed on J6. Oh, yeah. What does it say that? Also says 25 were killed during George Floyd. Of the who does it say was killed? On the 5? Who was it? Because we got 4 protesters. Who was the 5th? Was it Brian Sicknick? Grok is wrong. Only Ashley Babbitt was shot by a gun. Yeah, and then we had Roseanne Boyland, and we had the two other guys. One guy died of basically both of those two dudes died of heart problems. We had 4 protesters who died. Brian Sicknick died following day from natural causes. And they gave him like a state funeral and all that crap. What? Look, and rest in peace to Brian Sicknick. I'm sorry he passed. Peace to him, peace to his family, and all the things. But he wasn't murdered by James Sixers. Okay, so stop that lie. And Congress people are doing that. It's disgusting. All right, so my friends, it has been a beautiful stream. Thank you for being here. Thanks for watching the show. Thanks for inviting a friend or family member to come over here and hang out with us when we go live. We will be back tomorrow. I'm sure it'll be a busier day tomorrow, and we'll get into it again. But before we wrap it up on the day, we want to say thanks to our amazing mods and our meme smiths, the people who help keep this place nice and orderly around here. K-Bean, Donut Mind Me, Carrie B, Playin' Hooky, Dog Digger, and Janek. We appreciate all your help and support. Geegum Geegum, Elliot Dockmaster, and Just Rhonda, purveyor of fine emojis. Thank you to all of the people who help this come together and be so amazing. My friends, that is going to be it for us on the day. Locals, friends, stick around for a little bit. We'll hang out. Otherwise, members, we're back tomorrow, 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And then we're definitely back in the show at the same time, same place. And when we're back here, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.